Hi, this is Tommy with Tommy's Piano Corner. Do you ever get frustrated by not being able to tackle the repertoire that you'd like to play? In this video, I'd like to share 3 great tips why you can sort of approach this as if you were baking a layer cake and gradually build in layer by layer. So if you're sitting comfortably, let's begin. So, unless we're learning something that is totally within our technical capability, then by definition, during this learning process, we're actually needing to acquire new technique to achieve what we want to achieve. There is most definitely a school of thought that thinks that technique is achieved by scales, by hand-on, by churning, and constant exercises of that nature. However, I do think there is another way. I've discussed on my blog before my sort of view on scales, arpeggios and exercises. You know, when I was young, just as everybody did during my grades, I learned all of my scales, I learned all of my arpeggios to a certain standard. You know, I used to spend a good amount of time every day practicing them. But as a returning pianist, I have to question the value really of investing your time doing this. As a returning pianist, equally, I don't really want to spend all of my time learning more simple repertoire either. I do want to tackle those more complex pieces that I love and that maybe, you know, I could almost play all those years ago. So that really now means I need to find a way to build new technique by using the repertoire that I'm using. I think finally also, you know, I have very limited time to practice. And I don't know if I want to spend that time sitting there doing scales, hand-on or churning or anything like that. A pianist called Louis Kentner once said that a piece is either easy or it's impossible. The process by which it migrates from one category to the other is simply practice. At any one point in time, I normally have a couple of longer-term projects on the go, things that I might expect will take me maybe more than a year to learn, and of course some shorter-term projects that I think I might be able to get under control within a month or so, you know, assuming I can practice just for an hour a day. So, how can we approach some of these longer-term projects? Do we just sit there, keep plugging away at it until eventually it comes right? You know, in my day job, I'm actually an IT program manager. And one of the things we always say to our clients when we're trying to explain why something's taking longer than you might expect or things aren't going quite according to plan is that with IT, it's a little bit like peeling an onion. As you find one problem, you resolve that problem only to find that there's a different problem underneath that you then need to fix and so on. So you get this multi-layered effect like an onion. However, I think when you're trying to learn a piece of music, rather than approach it from a purely problem-solving point of view, it makes more sense to actually try and build it from the ground up by identifying the areas that you believe will be difficult up front, working on those areas, and then gradually building the piece to a point at which you can perform it. We will, of course, no matter what we do, keep running into issues that, you know, will be a little like peeling the onion that we'll need to resolve there and then. But I think with proper planning, we can probably work better rather than crying over onions all the time, thinking more about baking our layer cake. At the moment, my 3 long-term projects are Liszt's Liebestraum No. 3. I'm also trying to learn Chopin's Study No. 2, Opus 25, which is nicknamed the Bees. And I'm trying to get to grips with Rachmaninoff's 18th variation on a theme of Paganini. Each of these has sections that quite simply I can't play. So in order to approach them, I'm needing to build them up very slowly, piece by piece, to get something closer to the desired result that I want. Let's look at a small part for this video of the Liebestraum No. 3. There are many technical difficulties in this piece, so there are lots to choose from, but let's just look at one small part. You know, and I'll be honest with you, I'm still very much at the working out stage of this. I've not got it perfect yet, but I do feel that this approach and the exercises that I've devised are really helping me to be more reliable and more consistent as I practice this piece. So we're now at the very beginning of June, and in 6 months' time it'll be December. So I will then record a version of this, and we'll see just how well I've managed to do over the course of a year to learn something which is really well beyond my basic technical ability at the moment. So then, let's take a look. I'm just going to focus on bars 41 to 43. So that's basically where the melody comes back, you know, in strong, clear octaves. So the section itself has a few challenges. First, there is, of course, the strong, clear octaves themselves. Secondly, you've got the fact that frequently the hands now need to jump from being close together into opposite directions so that they're now far apart. And then the third challenge is that you need to do this in reverse. You need to go from the octave back to an arpeggio in the middle. All of which means your hands are flying around the keyboard in different directions and still needing to play quite a lot of notes together. So this is also played fairly quickly as well at this part of the music, which for me at least makes it even more difficult to achieve. So what I've been doing is I've devised a few exercises that will help me to practice each individual difficulty one at a time, rather than trying to practice the entire thing with all of the difficulties simultaneously. So in addition to the hand-separate practice that I do every day of these bars, I also spend 5 minutes or so on specific exercises. So the first one that I do is taking the octaves, and rather than playing the arpeggio in the middle, just use it as a block chord. So what I'm practicing is moving from chord to octave and back to chord again. You'll notice also that what I do here is in my left hand, I play the note of my fourth finger, so the G sharp, which is just before the jump, so that my hands get used to the fact that they're not actually moving at the same time. My right hand moves first to the start of the octave, and then my left hand follows downwards afterwards. The next thing I do is introduce a couple of different rhythmic patterns to put a pause at a different point of this. Note here then that what I do is I introduce a slight pause before I bring my hands back together at the center of the piano. So effectively what I'm doing is I'm practicing the outward jump closer to performance tempo and focusing on that jump here, and then taking a pause so that I can bring my hands back together again much more slowly without the additional stress of having to do the two jumps one after another. Then I do the reverse. I use a rhythm that effectively means that I have to jump inwards quickly, but take a slight pause before I jump outwards. And then finally, I do on where I play the actual arpeggio as written, but pause before each of the jumps. Then finally, I suppose each day what I will do is I'll practice these bars as written, but slowly, and avoid the temptation to try and bring everything up to speed too quickly. Basically, what I'm focusing on here is practicing each individual difficulty separately, yet leaving it in its overall context, so that that gives you more of an idea that you're building one layer on top of another. This has three great advantages. First, I believe you spend more time practicing right notes rather than wrong notes, and I'll film a separate video about that soon. Secondly, whilst you are practicing, you're constantly practicing at something closer to the performance speed that you'll need to achieve later with each individual technical problem. And thirdly, of course, you are focusing on only one problem at a time rather than the entire thing. I hope you found this both interesting and useful, and please do let me know in the comments below where you've been able to put this technique into practice yourself. If you're not already, then please do subscribe to Tommy's Piano Corner, click the notification bell to be sure to be notified of any new videos, and I look forward to seeing you again next week. Thanks for watching.